back to Zero Sum Gaming here at the Culture Cache. Jenny B is back and better than ever. She wants us to show off Skate or Die for the NES. Can you tell? If you have an idea or a game that you want to see us cover here at Zero Sum Gaming, or really any of our other shows, head on over to Patreon, just leave us a message on the board, we will make it happen. For now, let's hit the bowl and see what this game has to offer. If you were around for the glory days of the NES, the odds are virtually certain that you played this game, and they're decent that you owned it as well. It was the right game at the right time to capture the cross-section of fans of the NES and skating. For more information, check out the companion article. There's a link in the description. Interestingly enough, this game's title comes from another skateboarding game, 720 Degrees. In that Atari arcade game, you had to keep scoring points to stave off a swarm of angry bees. When they reach you, the game is over. If you go for too long without pulling off any tricks, the message, Skate or Die, appears on the screen as a warning. The NES version of this game is actually a joint collaboration of two companies that are among the most hated in the industry today. It was originally developed by Electronic Arts. In fact, Skate or Die was its first in-house made game. EA has a habit of buying up competitors' New York Yankees style. It has major digital rights management, or DRM, issues, including installing rootkits on its own customers. It also often requires a persistent internet connection to play games, which is especially fun when EA has server issues and renders your shiny new game little more than a $60 coaster. Electronic Arts has even been named the worst company in America by the Consumerist magazine. Twice. In a world where Comcast exists, this takes some serious effort. Sadly, EA often requires an absurd workload of its employees as well. Staff members report having to work upwards of 100-hour weeks. This is ironic when you consider the origin of the company. Did you ever wonder where the name Electronic Arts came from? In the 70s and early 80s, game creators were viewed as little more than punch clock employees. EA actively recruited talent by offering to promote them as rock stars. The box art of early EA games even reflects this. It seems that the company made famous by recognizing the ability of its workers has given way to little more than a first world sweatshop. As much as it pains me to say this, it seems that Konami isn't any better these days. I don't want to say too much, because I want to see how all this plays out in the long run, much like how I refuse to rush to judgment on newer games. I want to have adequate time to see how everything plays out and give it a good, serious examination. Having said that, Konami's treatment of Hideo Kojima, a gaming legend in his own right, seems suspect. I don't doubt that he probably is throwing his weight around. But that's no excuse to cut off your nose to spite your face. Even worse is how it led to the cancellation of the highly anticipated PT Silent Hill game. And even these pale in comparison to the debacle that is fob insurance in Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. This hurts. It feels like finding out that a respected community member deals in kiddie porn. Nevertheless, I choose to remember Konami for the greatness it used to be known for, rather than the shit-loaded blunderbuss it has become. As far as Skate or Die goes, Konami handled the NES port and published it under their Ultra Games label. Remember how I said EA used to coax employees away from rival game companies? That's actually an important aspect of this game. Did you ever play Summer Games, Winter Games, or California Games? They're made by Epyx, and if you have, you'll notice some similarities immediately. There's a reason for that. 3 of the programmers of the Commodore 64 version of Skate or Die worked on the games and were among those that EA managed to peel away. If you're not familiar with Summer Games and the like, the basic premise is that there's a single unifying theme tying together otherwise disparate events. This game is akin to that. There are 5 different events, and they all have to do with skateboarding, but that's about all that ties them together. You can practice or compete in each of the 5 events, or even opt for Compete All, which lets you run through all of them back to back. There's also the Skate Shop, which serves as the high score leaderboard and allows you to input the names of up to 8 players. Let's take a look around the Flesh and Asphalt Skate Shop for a second. There's a surprising amount of character to it. You can scroll around for all manner of flavor text. My favorite is to put the cursor on this guy's mouth to see the funny things he has to say. Who is this guy anyway? His name is Rodney Recluse. I think he's supposed to be what the designers imagined skating innovator Rodney Mullen would look like as an adult, but he looks a lot like Rodney Dangerfield, and I know I'm not the first person to say that, but come on, look at him. It also makes me think of his son Lester. I wonder if his son was inspired by Lester Bangs. So how about the actual gameplay? As I said, there are 5 different events in which you can compete. The Joust is a head-to-head event which pits 2 skaters against each other in Mortal Kombat. Okay, maybe not, but you do take turns beating the shit out of each other with one of those pugil sticks from American Gladiators, and yes, that is what they're called. Only one player at a time is armed. If you have the bopper, it's your job to whack your opponent. If you're the unlucky schlub without it, you have to survive 5 passes in order to steal the oversized Q-tip from your opponent. The first to 3 points wins, but you have to win by 2, so these can sometimes last a while if you have 2 evenly matched players. I like the characters you can choose for the computer to control if you're playing alone. They add just the right touch to this event. The Joust is fun for a while, but it's fairly shallow, so you won't revisit this one all that often. The race is a fun event. It's not a race against anyone, just a race against the clock, and even then, the clock is only a part of the story. Your goal is at the bottom of the hill, but in addition to just getting there, you can rack up points along the way by performing tricks. There are frequent junctions which offer you 2 choices, so there's a surprising variety to the ways you can traverse this event. You can play it safe and try to speed your way downhill, or spice it up and take the more dangerous paths. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I also really like the commentary crawl on the bottom of the screen. It's as if some unseen announcer remarks on all your radical moves, and especially on your bails. The Jam is my favorite event. I guess you could say the Jam is my jam. Sorry. It's basically a hybrid between the Joust and the race. Like the race, you want to get to the finish as quickly as possible. You can also pocket some free points during the event, but not by performing tricks. Rather, your goal is to cause property damage and beat your opponent senseless. The Jam pits 2 skaters against each other. You get points for each hit you land on your opponent, especially if you can make him kiss the asphalt. The faster your time, the more points you get at the end. This mode requires both players to be on the screen at the same time, so if you get far enough ahead, your opponent will be rubber banded forward, but have to eat a time penalty for it. As in the race, you do have a few choices to make on your descent. You even have a tactical choice to make from the get-go. Do you want to win by tormenting your opponent, or do you want to outscore him in the speed department? There really is a surprising amount of depth to an event that doesn't even last a minute. Ugh. Next, let's talk about my least favorite event, the high jump. I know I don't stand alone in my disdain for this filler. The high jump is literally just a button mashing game. Seriously, tap B in the control pad as quickly as you can to gain speed. When you jump, if the height is to your liking, press the A button and that's your score. You have 5 passes to get the most height. The game registers either the jump you pressed A on, or in the event that you never do that, it takes your 5th attempt. You'll probably try this so you can say you did, but then you'll never play it again. It sucks. Pass. And finally, let's talk about the freestyle. You get 10 passes to do whatever you want. There are many different tricks of varying difficulties at your disposal. You also get a bonus upon completion based on the variety of tricks you performed. This leads to a rich and fulfilling event. How will you spend your 10 passes? Will you stick to high-value tricks like 720s and hand plants? Or will you mix it up and count on the bonus? The fact that you're limited to 10 passes means you have to put your routine together beforehand. In this way, the freestyle does an excellent job replicating the real-life event. Ask around. The people you know likely remember this event fondly.
What was that? Did his head just come off? Let's see that again.
Man, they really mean it when they say skate or die. Oh, I see. It was just his helmet. That makes sense. 6-year-old me growing up playing this game on a black and white TV really did think the more disastrous spills did decapitate the player though. Actually, there's a lot of fun to be had with the humorous ways you can fail in this game. Well, there's no getting around this one. Graphics have improved a lot since 1988. I'm not going to say that this game has bad graphics, but they aren't exactly good either. There's a lot of just graphical weirdness going on. The look of your skater is determined by the event you're playing. This leads to some wildly different depictions of the same character. Take a look at the title screen. When you leave the skate shop, you're wearing the same clothes, but suddenly you have on shades and black hair. The only other time you'll look like this is while you're playing the race. Other graphical anomalies occur in the Jam and Joust. Palette swaps are readily employed and the only means of differentiating the characters. This also leads to the quirk of Poser Pete, Aggro Eddie, and Bionic Lester looking exactly the same in-game. Perhaps even more bizarre is the total lack of animation for your attacks in the Joust. When you press A, the stick flashes, but that's the only indicator that you're attacking at all. The music is great. Honestly, there's only one problem, and that's the limited number of tracks. They're all pretty good, especially the title screen, the jam, and the freestyle. And thankfully, the only questionable track is relegated to the only questionable event, the high jump, and even that music isn't really that bad. The sound effects for this game are also fun and fitting. The controls vary from event to event. The high jump sucks, button mashing isn't fun, and nobody likes it. The race and jam take some getting used to, but control fairly well. There is a slight delay from when you input a command to the character performing it. This is especially true when jumping. Still, it's not too bad. My advice is to try out both regular and Goofy Foot to see what you prefer, then pick one and marry it. This helps you get used to the controls. The freestyle and joust control very well. Appropriately, the most difficult moves to do are also the hardest to control, as they should be. Where the game really shines is in the fun factor department. 3 of the 5 events are fun to score attack even to this day. The game is simple enough that almost anyone can pick it up and play it. It's certainly not the most complex game around, but there's a lot more intricacy to the game than there appears to be at first glance, and I think that's a large part of what gives this game the longevity that it has.
So how about it? Is this game worth it? Skater Die only goes for about $5. It really was a common game back then. It's strange because when I look at it, the graphics are so-so, the music is good but fairly limited, and while the gameplay is fun, there's just not a lot of it. Yet somehow, this game manages to rise above simply being the sum of its parts. I don't know what it is. Maybe it was just the perfect game to encapsulate skater culture and gamer culture during the 1980s. Frankly, I'm more likely to play this game than one of the Tony Hawks. Thanks for watching.
Well, that's the story of my life. No respect. No respect.